What's up, everybody? How's this later time in the day work for everybody? I feel like we get more viewers on Mondays. I did get some comments from other people, and they said that 6 p.m. Central might work better for them as well, so maybe we'll push it back a little further. But anyways, I don't know if you guys noticed, I did change the frame out for the logo, and I did put the little DC step down. I have it set to about 9 volts, and you can kind of make out the logo, but with the white frame is just completely blown out. So, but anyways, we're back with another Ask Tim. If you guys see, I got a couple of things here I'm going to tease. Inside this printer that's printing right now is our EasyBoard V2. We're going through the final testing stages to make sure everything works in terms of the firmware. All the hardware and thermal testing passed. They're actually about 10C, our drivers and everything run about 10C cooler than the EasyBoard V1. The EasyBoard V1 didn't run that hot anyways. It was about 55 to 60C with no cooling on it. So we're testing this. There's no cooling fan on this board, just to kind of emulate a worst case scenario of no cooling. So the EasyBoard V2 is alive and working. That's what's in here. I also don't know if you guys noticed, but there's light coming off of this printer. This has the Easy Neo strip on it that will plug directly onto the new EasyBoard V2, so there will be a dedicated header. I'm currently working on a guide on using a DC step down for you guys that have an EasyBoard V1 or other boards that don't have enough power in terms of the 5-volt rail to power these strips, because they do require about 0.9 amps, not 9 amps, 0.9 amps power to run at full brightness. So we're putting together a guide on that, and we will eventually have plug-on adapters for the EasyBoard V1 that is just give the little board power, plug it onto the EasyBoard, and turn an option on the firmware. But as a stopgap measure, because of all the supply issues we're having with silicon, we will be doing a video on how to wire up a DC step down to power the Easy Neos and then make a connection to any board. So, but yeah, they're pretty awesome. So I can change the colors, or I can turn them on and off. The strip is mounted up here in the rail, and there's 15 pixels on the strip. It will act like a progress bar as you're going through and like starting a print, doing a preheat. So it'll actually change color and look like it's moving. And then once it starts printing, it'll turn white just like this, so it illuminates the print area. And these come with T-nuts and everything, and the cable, and even nice little cable hider clips that go into the extrusion. So, but you can change whatever colors you want. I'm just changing it right from the printer LCD. You can just literally do presets here. There's a bunch in Marlin already. So it's pretty neat. I'm definitely gonna have to slap these on a bunch of my machines, because it just looks so cool. But yeah, I figured it'd be cool to show it off. I kind of like the night mode in the office anyways. So, but you can see plenty of light on the print surface, so you can actually see what's going on there, and it's out of the way. So, anyways, I think that's about it. I mean, this is pretty big news. We will be stocking coax filament too, on Friday. We got that all in. We processed the shipment. I just have to get all the product listings made. So we will be having coax filament on there. I've been printing with their PET-G, and their PET-G prints beautifully. I can't say I'm surprised. But again, I hadn't printed a ton of PET-G, because mostly what we use here is PLA and ABS. But their PET-G has been printing great. Very little stringing, especially compared to other brands. Like I've got some random Inland filament here and some other Chinese filament brands. And I also have Atomic PET-G, and Atomic PET-G prints great. And the coax prints just as good as the Atomic. So we'll probably be getting some PET-G colors in our shop soon. I'm just going to run through a couple more rolls and see how the consistency is. But if it's anything like their ABS and their PLA, I have no doubts that it's going to be good. So, anyways, I think that's about it. So EasyBoard V2 is coming along. It's working. It's in a printer, printing. This little printer is just going to be chewing up filament, making sure that the board works correctly and we're not having any bugs. At this point, if anything were to come up, it's probably going to be software. But speaking of software, we have got a lot of progress made on updating Unified 2 to Marlin 2.0.9. If you are brave and don't mind moving some files around to assemble the firmware folder yourself, and I'll just show you guys what I mean by that, because on our GitHub, we have the firmware tracked there, and I do all my commits and everything. But if you download from the GitHub directly, which is what you have to do for any of our testing firmware, you actually won't get the pre-set up zip files like what you're used to if you download our firmware. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So I need to just pull up our GitHub here. So if you are brave and you want to check out our testing branch, if you go to our unified firmware GitHub page, which is github.com/th3dstudio/unified firmware, it'll take you to this page, and I'll post a link to that in chat. If you click the little drop down here and change the branch from 2.0.x to 2.0.x-testing, you will see a different code here, and you can see here all the updates I've done to it. This is the testing branch that we're working on getting all the updates done to. I've passed compiles for our Easy Board and for the Kingroad KP3 and the KP3S as well. So not saying it's ready to go, but it's ready to start having people test compile it. We're going to test compile every build here, but if you want to play with it, you can do that. I don't know why the chat box keeps coming back up on these screen shares. Like, I disable it and it keeps popping up. But anyways, so if you go here, you click code, hit download zip file, it's going to go ahead and download this, and you'll see here Unified Firmware 2.0x testing, and it's going to download the file. And then once that file's done downloading, I just realized my fat head is covering my download preview, but there's a little download window up right now that says it's downloading the zip file. So I'll show you guys how the firmware is structured. So you guys have the firmware folder that you guys are all used to. Remo has found a squeaky toy, of course, because I'm streaming. He hasn't touched one all day, and he hears me talking. So he's like, great time to play the Song of My People. But anyways, so if we download the file here, I'm going to open it up. So here's the zip file. He never plays with this toy unless I'm streaming. Never touches it. Anyways, so inside here, you'll see all the folders. This is the firmware folder you guys are used to opening in VS Code. He just took that off my desk. I swear to God. Remo, enough. Go lay down. We'll find a quiet toy. You have a whole bin of them. Anyways, so you have the firmware folder here, but if you extract this, it's not going to actually work. So what you'd want to do if you want to play with the testing build, you have to go into board configuration files, select the folder for whatever machine and board configuration you're using. So like just for example, if you're using a Creality 422 board, you go in here and you would copy this folder into the firmware folder. I'm just going to extract it and show you guys. So let me just put it in an arbitrary folder here. So let's see here. So you would just need to go in here, go to board configuration files. Let's say we're doing it for the printer that has a Creality 422 board in it. You go in here, copy this file, or folder I should say, copy the firmware folder from here, go back to the main folder here and paste it. And you shouldn't be asked to overwrite anything. So this then places the platform.io file and the config files for that particular board, and then you can go ahead and open this in VS Code. So if I go ahead and pop open VS Code here, I can hit open folder, paste that path in, and hit select folder, and this should come up with the, the hell? Do you trust? I've never gotten, they must have updated, this, updated VS Code. That's weird. Anyways, yeah, I'm going to trust myself. But this will be what you're used to seeing. So you see the platform.io files here with the STM32 RET for the Creality. So that's how you can play with our testing builds. There is a little bit of a manual aspect to it, but I just want to show you guys. So basically, you're just going to copy the firmware folder from whatever machine, brand, and board you're using. So hopefully that makes sense. Because a couple people were asking me how to use it, and I was like, you got to copy files around. I have a script here, if you guys look. When we do a release, I have a batch file here that automatically pulls in all the files and packages them into the zip files that you guys are used to seeing. And then we upload these with the GitHub release. But since this isn't an official release and this is just a testing build, there are no zip files. So hopefully that makes sense. It makes sense to me, and I'm the one that has to deal with the code. So, yeah, anyways. So let's see what we have in chat in terms of questions. Nemo Griffs, I don't care to admit they've been waiting here for 2 hours. I set it for 4 p.m. and I made an announcement that we were changing the time. So both streams are at 4 p.m. so they're later in the day. I might play around with do Mondays work well for you guys, or should we do streams not on Mondays and do like a Wednesday, Friday, with Friday maybe being a later one? I'm not sure. I mean, you guys are the ones that watch. I want to make it as easy and convenient for you guys to watch as possible. So, let's see here. I'm looking for questions. You guys need to post questions in the chat. 3D Makers Hub, why did Arion use your logo on their boxes? What? Let's see. Arion? I'm familiar with Arion. I haven't kept an eye on them. I'm not sure. We have no affiliation with Arion. I'm looking on their site. I don't see anything that looks like our logo on our site. Or on their site. I'm not sure. They have their own logo. Why would they use someone else's logo? Anyways, let's see. I see Spot on said 6 p.m. would be better. Let's see here. I'm looking for questions. You guys need to ask questions. Matt Mudib says controlled like a normal NeoPixel strip using Marlin NeoPixel support. Yes, that's correct. There's 15 pixels total. Nemo Griff's asking, are we going to have the games in the firmware for the new V2 board? Here's a spoiler alert. The games have always been available. You just have to add in a undocumented define if you look at the source code. If you add a define, so # define space games _ mode in all caps, you will have games on your board with our firmware. Now, do not do this on ones like the Melzy board that are limited on space, or like the Big Tree Tech boards, but the stock Creality boards that have, like the stock 32-bit Creality boards that have 512K of memory, those can do it. The EasyBoard V1 can do it. We just don't have them enabled by default. It's kind of like a little Easter egg. So, yeah, you just add a define. So they're wrapped in a define statement. So look at the configuration adv.h file, and you'll see in there, just search games _ mode. But yeah, if you like enable that on a board that's got limited memory, like the SKR E3 Mini or the Melzy boards, or probably even the Mega 2560 boards, like the Ramps ones, you're probably going to have compile issues where it's complaining about memory. But yeah. Let's see here. And the EasyBoard V2 will be supported with our Easy firmware as well. We do need to do some updates to the code because we're using a different CPU, so we have to retool things a little bit, but we'll have both the V1 and the V2 boards supported. We plan on maintaining Easy firmware support for our Easy boards for many years. Like there's no end of life date. The nice thing about even the EasyBoard V1, you guys that have the EasyBoard V1, we've still got a ton of memory on that chip, so we're still going to keep doing updates to that board for as long as it's feasibly possible. So, I mean, hell, we still support the old 8-bit boards. Jacob is asking, other than TiVo, where can I get a control box? I think good luck getting something from TiVo. I would honestly just do what they call a control box delete. I'm assuming if you have a control box, you probably have like a TiVo Tornado, or maybe the Black Widow, I think it was, or the Tarantula. Basically, you print a bunch of parts that you mount all the electronics to the printer frame. Usually they come with like the control box delete Thingiverse projects. They come with like feet to raise it up, so everything gets mounted underneath the bed. Highly recommend just doing that. Yeah, he says he has a tornado. There are definitely control box deletes because I had a tornado. I ended up giving it away to a buddy of mine, but I did the control box delete. I would just do that. Get rid of the control box completely. Then you don't have to worry about it. I'm hit and miss with control boxes. I like them when things are working, but when I have to work on them, I'm not a huge fan. But then again, you know, a machine like the Ender 3, everything's buried in the mounted control box. So, you know, if in one hand, shit in the other. Hopefully I use that mannerism correctly. Okay, Matt Appleton, Unified 2 firm. If I change my X and Y offset for a direct drive, will it not change my auto home point? My prints look like they're in the middle, but my nozzle auto homes off the bed. So your X and Y offset, I'm assuming you're talking about your sensor offset, that will change where the printer homes in the center of the bed. But if you have a direct drive kit that pushes the nozzle forward, you're going to need to use the home adjust feature. And we talked about this on a last stream, where if you are putting a mount on your printer that's relocating where the nozzle is, you're going where it's moving it forward away from the X axis plate. Why is this name escaping me now? This is the carriage, X carriage. If it's moving it forward on the X carriage, you're going to lose build volume, so you need to go into the code and edit not only your home point using the home adjust feature, telling it how far off the bed the nozzle is from the zero position, but also then reduce your build volume in your slicer, and you could do it in the firmware. Now, you could do it just in the slicer, and 99% of the time you're fine just leaving it. The only problem is then if you have like G-code that, you know, let's say you had a 300 millimeter by 300 millimeter X and Y build volume, and you put a mount on there and you lost 10 on the Y, so your Y is only 290. If you don't cap it in the firmware, your printer can try to move further than it's able to move, and then it's going to jam that axis into the frame of the printer, and you'll hear the motor skip and stuff, and it'll screw up a print. Whereas if you cap it in firmware, the firmware will physically prevent the printer using the software to not move past those limitation points. So, and the variable you're looking for, so if it's usually your Y you have to modify, it would be Y underscore bed underscore size. So you'd modify that value in the source code for the firmware for your printer model that you're dealing with. But yeah, a lot of those direct drive kits, they will move the nozzle forward, just because of how everything mounts, and you will lose some build area on typically the Y direction. There are some that move it on the X, but anything that moves it from the stock location, you're probably going to lose build volume. And then you would need to adjust your bed settings in the firmware to make sure you're not going outside of those bounds then. Troy Bands, how do we reduce PET-G sticking to the nozzle without using a hardened steel? You're just going to have to make sure your nozzle's clean. Whenever I print PET-G, I make sure to go in there and clean the nozzle off as best I can with like a wire brush. Be very careful when using a wire brush. You can short your board out if you're not paying attention. I've done it. I've been cleaning nozzles for many years with them, but I'm very careful because I have had one printer where I cooked the thermistor input, my Wanhao i3 Mini, and I had to replace the processor on it, which is not something your average person can do. Because I wasn't paying attention, I accidentally contacted one of the legs of the heater cartridge to the brush and one of the other legs of the thermistor, and it screwed up the reading on the I/O pin, which required me to have to replace the processor, which is a huge pain in the ass if you don't have all the tools, which most people do not have those kind of tools sitting around. But basically, clean your nozzle, use a silicone sock. Those are really good for preventing stuff from sticking to the block. You can also try to take some dry PTFE lube and rub it on the actual tip of the nozzle when it's cool. There's many companies that make a dry PTFE lube. WD-40 has their own, like the WD-40 brand. I'm not telling you to put WD-40, like what your grandpa has in his garage on your nozzle. I'm saying WD-40 as a brand has a dry PTFE lubricant spray, and DuPont also has one, and I'm sure there's many other companies, but the dry PTFE sprays are nice because you can spray it on there, or spray it into a towel and wipe it on there, and then it dries, and that will help keep stuff from sticking to the nozzle. You can also go with a plated type nozzle. Like we have our own line of nozzles called the Easy Flows, and those are a plated copper nozzle. So they not only transfer heat really well, they also resist wear from abrasives like glow in the dark or carbon fiber, but that plating acts like a non-stick coating, and it makes it harder for stuff that flips up or flies up as you're printing to stick to that surface. It still can happen even with the plated nozzles, but it doesn't hold on as well. But if you're having a lot of issues with PETG sticking to it, it's usually because you're stringing. You need to look at your settings, and if you're banging your head against the wall changing settings and you can't figure out what it is, get a different brand of PETG and swap it out. If you have a dehydrator, PETG does like to pick up moisture, and the more moisture you have in PETG and it's picked up, the more stringing you're going to get and the worse the print quality is going to be. So, let me see here. I do have an article for filament drying, because I have a food dehydrator here, and it's the one I have is the higher end one linked in the guide. I like that one because I don't have to cut anything or modify it. Literally, you just don't insert the trays into it, and you can fit like 4 or 5, almost 6 rolls into that dehydrator, and it's like $150. Try drying out the filament. It could just be something as simple as moisture, but I have had just certain brands of PETG that just string more than others. It's just the nature of the beast. So I have noticed the US-made filaments like Coex and the Atomic PETG, they string a lot less than the stuff that's made overseas. So that's just generalizations from my experience, but I've just had a lot easier time printing PETG that's made in the US from reputable companies. So let's see here. Oh, there we go. Chat jumped. Let's go back up. It moved quite a bit. Let's see. I just saw here Nemo Griff. He uses a plated nozzle because PETG love to stick to everything. Yeah, PETG is a very sticky material in general. Like, it's a really, really sticky material. It likes to string. It likes to stick to everything. Hell, PETG even bonds to bare glass. It's it's a nice material in terms of heat resistance, but it's kind of a pain to print sometimes. I'm not even gonna lie. Matt Mudib, he has plated nozzles too. Let's see here. People talking about their nozzles. KY Guns Radio said, is Ender 6 hot and temp is swinging plus or minus 2 degrees off target? P8 tune is no help. Yep, that seems to be normal for that board. Ours is about plus or minus 1 to 2 degrees. I have a feeling, and this is just my speculation based on what I've seen, I have a feeling it's because they're sharing the ground line for the thermistor with other components going to that breakout board. It hasn't caused a thermal runaway for me, and it doesn't seem to affect the print quality. But what my plan was to do was literally run like just with standard like 22 gauge wire, run this from the thermistor all the way back to the control board, replacing the stock wiring, so that way the thermistor has its own dedicated wires to use. Because they use that breakout board, because they use that breakout board, they're trying to conserve how many wires they need. And your thermistor has 2 pins. It's got a signal line that goes back to the processor on the control board, and it's got a ground line. And then it references, basically it references the resistance across the thermistor, and that resistance changes as your hot end gets hotter and colder. So if you have the ground line getting interference, it can cause the readings to jump around. So I'm pretty confident if I did that to mine, I'd probably see a lot more stable temperatures. But like I said, mine's plus or minus 1 to 2. Doesn't seem to really be hurting anything. It's just kind of an annoyance when I look over it and look over at it. It's like, ugh, because everything else in that printer has actually been pretty solid. So give me 1 second. I feel a tickle in my nose. Sorry about that. Yeah, you're not going to be able to PID tune that out because it's probably related to the wiring. Hopefully it's not a 5-volt issue because Creality has had that on their 8-bit boards where the 5-volt rail that feeds everything, there's still a 5-volt rail even on these 32-bit boards. It usually goes 5-volt, then down to a 3.3-volt regular. So it goes from your power supply, so like 12 to 24, then down to 5, then down to 3. And if that 5-volt regulator is not putting out a nice smooth power output, then you can still get temp swings as well. I have a feeling though it's because of how they did the wiring, because that ground line is shared. So if you got some wire laying around, and I mean, I could probably do it in about 10-15 minutes. I just haven't done it. Just run yourself a dedicated set of wires up to the thermistor. Just cut them, splice in the new one, go all the way to the bottom, and the connector that goes into the control board is just a 2-pin, or no, it's a 1-pin actually. They only populated 1 pin. They only populated the signal pin. So you will need a 2-pin JST XH plug on it, which I have laying around. But anyways, basically run yourself a new power wire. I think that would probably fix the issue. If it doesn't, then that indicates there's probably an issue with the 5-volt rail or the 3.3-volt rail on that board. But if there's one on the 5-volt, it could affect the 3.3 as well. Because those processors, 32-bit processors need 3.3 volts. The older 8-bit boards that came with printers and still come with some printers like Lulzbot for some reason on their new Sidekick. It's a $1,000 printer and they're shipping an 8-bit board with it for some reason. Those all use 5-volt, but all the new 32-bit ones, they typically run off a 3.3 volt. So let's see here. Let's see. I'm looking for questions here. People said later is better. Friday is a late chill stream day. We'll come back. We'll have a little discussion. I'm going to do a poll. Actually, let me do a poll. Let me see if I remember how to do the Nightbot poll. Hang on, I think it's poll new. I think this is it. Let's see, does that work? I can never remember the syntax because Nightbot will do stuff like that. Let's see, I posted it. Will that work? So basically I want to do two streams a week, and basically I'm feeling like we should move the Monday one to Friday. But go ahead and vote. Anyways, I'm going to keep answering questions. Vincent Robles is asking, what's the difference between the TH30 EasyBoard Lite and the EasyBoard Lite DIY and the testing config? There's 2 different firmwares we have for the EasyBoard. One is for pre-set up printers like the Ender series, some of the Solvols, the CR10s. The DIY one is literally do it yourself. That's what DIY stands for. That's for if you're taking the EasyBoard and you're putting it into a custom printer build. It's meant to be a simplified, guided setup to walk you through setting like your end stops, your motor directions, that kind of stuff, making it simple. I actually use that firmware on Bertha because Bertha has our EasyBoard, but Bertha is not a supported printer. Bertha is a custom build, and that's what that's for. So same kind of thing. We did the same kind of firmware. There's a DIY firmware for the MKS S Gen L. So if you guys have purchased an MKS S Gen L from us or use an MKS S Gen L and have tried the firmware out, it's the same kind of thing. So basically it's a simplified custom printer setup firmware to make the setup easier. So but yeah, let's see here. Does a heated bed thermal pad do anything worth the effort? I don't know what you mean by a heated bed thermal pad. If you're talking about insulation on the bottom of a heated bed, absolutely, that helps. It'll make it more efficient, less wasted heat, and quicker heat up times. I like having insulation on the bottom of my printer bits. Tin Man's asking, after I calibrate the E-steps on my extruder to extrude 100 millimeter when I tell it to, how do I calibrate my flow rate? I know there's plenty of info on Google, but I'd like your input. Basically, the easy way to calibrate your flow rate, once your extruder is calibrated, print simple like 20 by 20 by 20 cubes and check the dimensions on them, because if you're over extruding in terms of your flow rate, then the cube's going to come out bigger than it should. If you're under extruding, it's going to be lower, and you can mess with that. In general, I don't get too scientific about it. For PLA, I run anywhere from a 0.9 to 0.95 flow rate. For ABS, I run a 1.0 to 1.05, and then PETG, I run a 1.1. And those are simplified 3D references, but basically think of it as percentage. So like 90 to 95% in my slicer for PLA. For ABS, 100 to 105%, and then PETG, I usually run 110% for the flow rate. So, 1977 says he's got an Ender 3 and I got a layer shift every time in the same place. I replaced all the V rollers, reset the Z-rod, still does it every time on the same place. What can I do? That's a question that I'd love to answer, but I'm going to need you to post a picture in our Discord, server, which is linked below. There's a channel called Livestreams where you can post links and pictures, and I have it up on my other screen here, so you can actually show it to me, and I can even share it on the channel too. So, I see someone else asked in the Discord one here, what's your opinion on bed installation? Does it have any benefit? Yes, do it. I have it. I've done it on multiple machines. It helps with the heat up times, and it helps with not wasting as much power because the heat's just not getting dumped out. So let's see here. Keto is asking, I've got an Ender 3 Max, and I level it and get 1 or 2 prints, and I have to re-level, and I don't move it or anything, or do anything to make it do that. So any ideas or solutions? So, on any printer that's got adjustment knobs on the bottom, if you're using the springs, as the printer prints, it's going to vibrate and those are going to turn. That's one of the main reasons why when I have a printer that we put it like our Easy ABL on, we will solid mount the bed, meaning we get rid of the springs, is so that you're not dealing with the bed shifting on you. It's just something you have to do. That's just part of owning a printer and doing the manual leveling. Is it's going to get out of whack, especially, I don't know what surface you're using or, for your bed, but as you're working on the printer and using it and printing, it's going to shift things and you're probably going to have to re-level. If you had something like the Easy ABL, you can just solid mount the bed, get rid of the springs, and then let the ABL system take care of it and never have to touch it again in terms of leveling the bed. The only thing you'll have to do is when you do a first layer, you might have to adjust your Z offset, which is just as simple as pressing the button twice and then turning a knob on your screen, and then it'll adjust it. But if you're manually leveling, you're going to have to re-level it every now and then. So, let's see here. Any chance you'll release STL for the Ender 6 housing? Shipping the kit to Europe is ridiculously expensive. Unfortunately, no. We paid people here to design that, and it's a product we sell, so we will not be releasing the STL for that. So, and we don't want to sell it because as soon as you sell it to one person, then it's out on the internet, and we all know how that goes. Yeah, sorry, shipping's expensive. We don't set the shipping rates. There's literally nothing we can do about shipping. Because whatever prices you guys see on our website, that's the shipping carriers getting your address and getting our origin point and then coming back with rates. Let's see here. Sean Etheridge, I picked up a used CR10S Pro V2. I'm not looking at the firmware. It's super clean and simple, not much control. Do you guys offer firmware for it? So we do offer firmware, but you have to change the LCD out, which will give you a lot more control over it. Sorry, can't type and talk at the same time. And our CR10S Pro LCD upgrade kit works with the V1 and V2. The main difference between the V1 and V2 for the CR10S Pro is that the V1 came with Creality's proximity sensor that was terrible, and the V2 they switched to the BL Touch because they couldn't figure out how to get a proximity sensor working. But in terms of firmware setup, they're the same. There's also a video guide on that product page too to show you how to install it. No soldering, all just bolt it up together and update the firmware, and then you'll get rid of the touchscreen and you'll get a standard 128/64 screen. So, also, I just want to say, I forgot to mention this, we got part of the shipment of the 100 hats we ordered in, so those are on our site. We will not be reordering more hats once those are out. We're just doing a limited run of those. So if you guys wanted to grab one, they're in the shop right now. We got like 20 of them in today, and the other ones should be showing up tomorrow. So if you guys are interested in one, hit the TH3D shop. And these are not in our merch store. These are in our regular store. So our merch store, which does like the t-shirts, like what I'm wearing now, that's through Teespring. These we physically have here in our shop, and those will ship out right from us in Hobart, Indiana. So, Jonathan Barnes, is that a Cali dog you're printing there? Yes, it is. I printed a small Cali dog right here. Stop blowing the image out. Come on. Yeah, I should have not printed with white filament, but this is a roll I had open. That's a 200% scale one. So, I'm just going to keep having this print stuff. I don't know when I'm going to keep having it print. Maybe just a bunch of more useless trinkets. Actually, you know what? I'm going to have it print a bunch of TH3D Maker cards. I just want to keep this thing going as long as I can. So if there's any issues, they're found. So, let's see here. Jeremy Campbell, have you done any lithophanes? And what did you use for the backlight? I've done like 2 lithophanes in my entire life. I did one for one of Samantha's old coworkers. We're talking like 3 years ago. Don't get too crazy with the lights. Just find something, depending on what the power source available is to you, where the lithophane is going to go. So if they have wall power, just some simple LEDs. LED strips are fine. There's really no like one size fits all. The best thing would be like diffused LEDs, versus that way you don't get like bright spots or hot spots. Basically anything that's diffused and is going to fit into the enclosure you design. So I would stick with stuff that runs off of like 12 volts DC, so you're not dealing with like line voltage inside a lithophane. So let's see here. Sengo says Bondtech has a new firmware. It supports Easy ABL with the Ender 6 and an updated LCD firmware. I'll have to play with that because I do have the OEM LCD still in my testing bin. Let me see. Bondtech. They've reached out to us a couple times. We actually sent them over our CAD drawings for the probes because they were working on getting the Easy ABL supported with their mounts. I'll have to look it up. I got it over here on the left here. I'll have to see. Because if they figured out a way to hack the LCD to do more stuff than make dial-up noises, that would be great. Let's see here. I'm looking for questions now. Jay Smallwood's asking, could you not use the travel limits after homing corresponding to end stop position, then adjust the bed size when you move the hot end location? I mean, you could adjust your end stops, but the thing is, most printers don't have much extra travel on their, X or Y axis, so you may be able to move it and get it so like your nozzle's then centered when you go to the center point on your bed. But if you go to one of the extremes, usually the furthest location on like a Y is usually at, it'll bottom out at some point, or collide with part of the frame and then you lose steps. So, Maker Major is asking about a control box delete. Is there one for a CR10? Yeah, Top Hat Waffle actually has one he made for the CR10. It's on Thingiverse, and I did it to a buddy's printer, and I know quite a few other people. Let's see. I think they're called standalone mods, is what they're referred to. I'm trying to find it. I know Mr. Waffle. Yeah, he did it. He did one here. Now, his does have options for linear rails for the Y, but he's got other parts available for you. Like, you don't need to do the linear rail conversion. So, but he has a little relocation thing there. So you can check that out. Yeah, I think standalone would be the term to search for on Thingiverse, not control box delete. R Mills asks, what's good wire to have on hand for running wires on 3D printers? Want to have some on hand. I personally keep rolls of red and black, like the 2 conductor that are stuck together, like these. I usually keep 22 and 18 on hand. I also keep 12 gauge silicone wire on hand for the higher power runs. Basically, especially if you're doing like any repairs on your hot end, on your stepper motors, your thermistors, your end stops. If you have 18 gauge and 22 gauge, you can cover most of your bases there. So, Kevin's asked about the Voron. I have not looked into any of the Voron stuff, so I can't make recommendations. I know there's a bunch of guys on our Discord server that made that are doing Voron builds, so feel free to post in there. I'm sure as soon as you mention the V word, they all start popping out of their holes like, hey, someone say Voron? Someone say Voron? Let's see here. I can't remember the guy's name because his Discord is different, or his Discord name is different than his YouTube name. But he posted pictures in the live streams of his, he says he gets a layer shift on 3 or 4 and then around layers 20 and around 50. What, is that an Ender 3 or an Ender 3 V2? Because if it's a V2, and you have the 422 board, they have been known to overheat, so you could be getting overheating, and you just add some more fans over that. Larry Chambliss is asking, what do you think about the VoxLab? So the VoxLab, I like the build quality, I like the feature set. The problem is, which is a big problem, they're shipping 512K firmware on a 256K chip, which is unsafe. But once I'm done updating our Unified 2 to Marlin 209, which I'm trying to get done this week, which is why if you guys have time to test the testing build, let me know. If you ping me on Discord too, we have a beta testing section, and I posted information on there. The new Marlin 209 update should fix a lot of issues, like the Ender 3 V2 with the stock LCD has this weird bug where if you do like a move from the screen, it'll like start backing the filament out of the extruder. That should be fixed in Marlin 209. And the homing issue, there's a homing issue that affects some 2560 boards, where when you're using like a BL Touch or an Easy ABL, you go to home and it will not home in the center. It'll just stay where it's at and try to home there. That should also be resolved. And that bug is frustrating for me because I've never been able to replicate it on any boards here that run a 2560 chip. Even the same exact printer with the same exact board as somebody else remotely has, I could not get it to replicate the issue. So if you've encountered that, try the testing build and let me know if it still does the same thing, because right now the workaround is use Unified 1 because those printers are supported in Unified 1, and it seems to only affect the actual 2560 chips. I haven't seen it on the Melzies and I haven't seen it on any of the 32-bit boards. So I think it's a firmware bug, but part of me also is wondering if it's just the people's computers are compiling it on. Maybe my computer is doing something differently or using different library versions. Yeah. So we're already, we got like a 10-minute warning here. So I'm going to try to get through as many questions as I can. Let's see. Robert Matthews asking, random far-fetched idea. When a print is finished and the plate is cool, thoughts of setting up another email 70 and apply minor pressure to a flex plate to set up automatic print removal. That'd be kind of cool. I don't know how much I'd trust that or want to deal with that. Just more stuff to more stuff to go wrong. Let's see here. I'm trying chat jump, so I'm scrolling back up. I'm sorry. I also am pulling the poll up. If you guys did not vote in the poll, make sure you do, and I will post it again here. I'm gonna just post copy. There we go. All right, I'm scrolling down here. When's the next roast me stream? That's a good question. I should schedule that for this week. That could be a fun Friday thing. I got some scotch that needs to get drunk and some whiskey. Let's see here. Yeah, oh yeah, Larry was asking about the Vox Lab. We did a teardown on it here. Like I said, my main thing is their firmware and not doing things correctly, which could lead to potentially dangerous situations for people if those heaters get locked on because the firmware's locking up because it's using bad memory on the processor. So, Timman says he has an easy board on his Ender 3 Pro. I added stuff to it and used the online compiler, but I selected the Ender 3 and compiled that. Is that correct? Even though I have your board? Yeah, so if you're using the easy board, you have Ender 3. Ender 3 and Ender 3 Pro are the same exact firmware settings. So, like the physical printer has differences, but in terms of firmware, they're exactly the same. Do you have a bunch of 40mm fan cards with the TH3 logo? Oh, to keep this busy? I actually have fan grills. I already have those fan grills on most of the printers here. I think the maker coins would be good to keep it busy because then we can give them away and stuff. 17 all out is oh, your username is the same. My apologies. He says he has an Ender 3. I would try, honestly, man, if you're getting these weird shifts. I don't know if I would call that a shift though. Let me share this photo here that he sent. Because they're rough. It almost looks like you're too close to the bed and you might be hitting things. It's just a coincidence that's happening at the same time. So these are the pictures he posted. I'm gonna open up another one here. Let's see. I mean, yeah, first layer, I see the skirt or brim, whatever we're going to call it. But you can see here, you see this? Either you're not too close, because if this is your first layer, this looks good. This looks like your Z... Remo, stop barking. This looks almost like your Z didn't move up, and it's just re-extruding. I wouldn't call that a layer shift. That more looks, I would more call that like a Z-axis defect. Maybe your motor's going out or your cable's bad and has an intermittent connection. Because these first layers look decent. I'm assuming this is the first layer. It looks like one. But this looks like what I see when the Z doesn't move up. It just pushes the plastic right into the previous layer because it didn't move up. You can see the little overflow here with this rippling along the edges here. So, I would probably start with checking the cable, your Z motor cable. Obviously, I have a lot more parts here than you do. But one thing you could do is try... I'm just going to look at the motors on it. You could try swapping your X and Z motor or Y and Z motor. Hopefully, you don't have the pressed-on fittings. For the belts, but it's going to be if it's a hardware issue, it could be a couple things. It could be your motor, it could be your cable, or it could be the control board. Cable would be easy if you just swap out a cable, like move your Y cable to your Z and your Z to a Y, and then flip the connections at the board. You know, try to think of what you have on the printer itself. You can do a lot of troubleshooting with your actual printer by just swapping things around and like, oh, I'm having issues on my Y, but I know my X works, so let's roll this out. Let's switch the Y and the Z cable, and then move it and see if these, if I'm dealing with a stuttering issue, well, does that issue follow to the other one? So like my Y's having issues and I switch the cable from X to Y and Y to X, and then I move my Y, which is now hooked up to my X, and the X stutters, then I can go, okay, it's probably the stepper driver on Y. Kind of swap your stuff around and try to eliminate every point in the chain, from the motor to your board. So I'm going to try to get a couple more questions here, and then we're going to wrap this up because we like to keep these to an hour long. Marcus Loneval is asking, will you support running the Chiron with 2208s? I might add some options into there because I was thinking about, my Chiron is right behind me. I was thinking about doing that. I have 2209s and we carry 2209s, and that board can have them swapped out. The only thing you should have to do with the 2208s, because you're going to run them in standalone mode, is reverse your motor direction. If you're going from the 4988s, which is what it comes with, to the 2208s or 2209s, that should really be the only firmware setting you can change. If you don't want to change your firmware setting, you can just reverse the pins, unplug the motor plug, rotate it 180, and plug it back in. I've done that too, because then I don't have to mess with any firmware settings based off of the stock config. So, Suburban Alexander, who sells bulk size filament spools 2 kilogram plus? I know Coax carries 5-pound spools. Feel free to chime in the chat. Let's see. Uh-oh, hang on. Chat jumped. Hang on. I'm trying to find where we're at. Okay, Chiron Fix 2208s. Let's see here. Cleo Reyes is getting an under voltage on his Easy Pi after a couple months. Take the plug out, blow it out, like unplug the plug from your Pi, blow it out, and plug it back in and see if it goes away. If it doesn't, it could just be that the power adapter is going out. If it's still within warranty, those are 6 months warranty on those. Just contact us and we can go through some troubleshooting and then swap it out if it is bad and under warranty. But one of the things I have noticed, and I think it's from when people, if you yank on them, inside, like on these are our power cables for the Pis. I usually have like random products laying around here. But basically ours have a switch on them, and inside that switch casing, you can actually take a flathead and pull it apart and it'll open. I should grab. Could have swore I had one. I was like, I know I have one somewhere here. So there's a little switch on here. The thing is, if you give this a good yank, you can actually break the connection on the inside. There is strain relief on these, but if you catch it and pull it, anyways, you slip a little flathead between the seam here, and this will pull apart. And they're just little solder points. So if you want to take a look at it and see maybe something got broke on the inside, like here, if I just do a little, I'm just taking a little flathead. You can see inside here, it's just so the negative passes through, and then the red positive line goes through the switch. So if like the switch got damaged or something, if it's under warranty, we'll swap it out, no problem. But if it's out of warranty or someone got a hold of it and damaged it, you can either just bypass the switch completely if you want to, or see if there is, see if there's like a poor solder joint or something. But these do have like a little crimp. I don't know what the correct word is, but you can see little teeth that bite into the cable to prevent it from pulling out. So, but they're relatively easy to service. So, anyways, I'm looking for other quick questions here because we have to wrap things up. Marshall's asking, are we going to sell rail kits for the Under 6? No, we don't deal with linear rail stuff, and I don't think it needs it. It's been running pretty good. James Starks, I'm having an issue on Ender 3. If I move the Z-axis down 0.1 millimeter, then move it back up 0.1 millimeter, the motor moves, but the hot end doesn't raise back up until I move an additional 0.1. What issue is this? It sounds like your eccentric nuts, because on your left and right side, there's an eccentric nut. They're too tight, so those fine movements are just not physically moving the gantry up. A lot of people will tighten them down too much, and what happens is then it doesn't move up when you're doing all these minute adjustments. So you basically want that wheel contacting the extrusion strong enough that it doesn't spin freely, but loose enough where if you grab onto the wheel, so if I pinch the wheel, you can force it to kind of like skid against the extrusion. But it shouldn't be free, and it shouldn't be impossible to break it loose. It sounds like that's the case, because if you say you move it up an additional 0.1, it does move. It sounds like those are too tight, because if they're too tight, it's going to put load on the bearings, and they're not going to be able to move. So, let me see any other quick ones. When are we doing this month's giveaway? I got to figure out what printer we're going to give away. But I'll probably pull it this weekend. It'll be this weekend. Let me see here. Any other quick questions? How was Murph? I'll sum it up. It was nice to see the people I haven't seen in a bit, but the event itself was disappointing. Let's see here. Can you swap out the drivers on Creality boards and reflow them? I'm sure you could, but I wouldn't waste time on those. Yeah. We'll schedule the drawing. People don't need to be present to enter the giveaway. Or not enter, sorry, to win the giveaway. You can only enter them during live streams, but for the drawing, it does not matter, because it's kind of whenever we get time to do the drawings is when they get done. So anyways, we're right at the 5 o'clock mark, so we like to keep these at an hour. I appreciate everybody that stopped by. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys got some questions answered. Again, I'm going to do a plug. If you guys want these hats, they're in our shop at th3dstore.com. And they're not in the actual merch. If you go to our site and click merch, that's our Teespring store. These hats we physically have here in our shop, and you can get the hats here. We got 20 of them in today, and we expect to get most of the rest. We ordered 100 total. That's all we're making of them. So there's a few here. So if they go out of stock, they will come back in stock. Looks like we sold through a decent amount of them already. But they'll come back in stock a couple of times as we get the shipment in. But we ordered 100 of them. That's all we're doing. I think maybe the next run, I mean, this is my favorite one, but I also like this one too. If the snapback isn't your style, we also have the dad hat, which is my other favorite one. I don't know if any of you guys would be interested in us doing a run of the dad hats. I'm not an apparel store, but I thought it'd be cool to get some hats in, because I like wearing my hats, especially at events. These are great for if I'm at an event. Just look for Tim's blue hat. So, anyways, yes, I forgot to give the pupper treat. Now, I haven't even looked at him. He's over there in the garage, and he hears the bag. Ready? You want a treat, Remo? Do you want a treat? Yeah. Yes, he does. Shake. No. You got it. Hang on. Shake. Good boy. Touch. Touch. Good boy. There you go. There's your Scooby snack. All right, guys. I appreciate you guys all that stopped by. Again, hope you learned something. If you guys want to pick up some awesome parts for your printer, head to th3dstore.com. And I'll see you guys on the next stream, which we're going to do one this weekend. Just keep an eye out. We'll make a post. I just got to coordinate with the wife and find out when I'll have some free time, because there's a bunch of stuff we're doing around the house. So anyways, You guys have a good one. As always, happy printing.